a tale of betrayal, secrets, and unraveling truths. The first time it happened, I told myself it was a mistake. The second time, I convinced myself it was just a moment of weakness. The third time, I learned to live with it, or so I thought. Name is Daniel Mercer, and for the past 10 years, I have been married to a woman I once believed was my soulmate, Elena. She was everything I ever wanted, brilliant, beautiful, and charming in a way that could make a man forget his own name. But Elena had a secret, one that I had uncovered time and time again. She cheated, and I forgave. At first, I was furious. I wanted to leave. I even packed a bag once, but somehow she always pulled me back. She cried, she pleaded, she told me. She was lost, that she needed help. And I, the ever-loyal fool, stayed. But now something felt different. It started with a single envelope slid under my office door at work. No sender, no return address. Inside was a single photograph, Elena, another man, a candlelit dinner. Nothing overt, no damning evidence. But I knew that look in her eyes, the same one she used to give me. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I did something I had never done before. I investigated. I hired a private detective, an old college buddy named Rick who had a knack for sniffing out secrets. If she was hiding something, I needed to know all of it, and what he found shattered everything. Elena's affair wasn't just an affair. It was multiple. Different men, different cities, different identities. She wasn't just cheating on me, she was living entire other lives. I was nothing more than an anchor, holding her in place while she played her game. And then, the real shocker. One of the men, Victor Langley, was dead, murdered, and Elena was the last person seen with him. I waited for her that evening, sitting in the dim glow of our living room. The wine bottle was open on the table, 2 glasses poured. She walked in, humming softly, completely unaware that I knew. "Elena," I said calmly, "where were you last night?" She hesitated. That was her tell, a flicker of something in her expression. "Out with Sophia," she said. "We had dinner. You know how she—" "Don't lie to me." She froze. Then, as if flipping a switch, her expression softened into something pitiful, wounded. "Danny, what's wrong? You're scaring me." I know about Victor Langley. For a split second, just a second, I saw something flash in her eyes. Fear. Then she laughed. "Victor, you think I had something to do with—" "I know you did." The room fell into silence. She looked at me, assessing, calculating, and then she sighed, almost relieved. "I was wondering when you'd— finally figure it out." My blood ran cold. "You knew?" I asked. She took a sip of the wine. "Of course I knew." I stared at her, realization dawning like a slow horror film playing in my mind. "You wanted me to find out." She set the glass down. "You've always forgiven me, Danny. Always. No matter what I did, you stayed. But this—" She leaned forward, eyes dark. "This is different." I could barely breathe. "Why?" A small, cruel smile. "Because now you have a choice. Stay with me and be complicit, or leave and find out just how far I'm willing to go to keep my secrets." The air was thick with tension. My mind raced. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't sorry. She was daring me. And for the first time in my life, I realized Elena had never been the love of my life. She had been my captor. The question remains, am I the jerk for forgiving her, for staying, for turning a blind eye, or for what I was about to do next? Because Elena had made one fatal mistake. She thought I was weak. But now it was her turn to be afraid, and I was going to make sure she regretted ever underestimating me. The end, or perhaps just the beginning. A web of lies and the taste of revenge. The weight of Elena's words sat heavy in the air. Stay and be complicit, or leave and suffer the consequences. For years, I had let my love for her blind me, let my devotion turn me into nothing more than a fool with a ring on his finger. But now, the blindfold had been ripped away, and what I saw was no longer a loving wife. It was a predator, baring her teeth, daring me to make a move. Fine, I'd make a move, but it would be my move. I leaned back in my chair, forcing a smirk. You think I'm that easy to control? Elena raised an eyebrow, tilting her wine glass toward her lips. Oh, Danny, I know you are. My fingers tapped against the wooden table, heart pounding, but outwardly I was calm. The moment had shifted. She thought she had won. She thought I'd retreat into my old self, submissive, forgiving, predictable, but she had underestimated me. For the first time in our marriage, I had been playing a game of my own. Hours earlier, Rick, I said, sliding a flash drive across the table. I need this in the right hands. Rick plugged it into his laptop, brows furrowing as he scanned the files. Bank transfers, photos, call logs, evidence that tied Elena not only to multiple affairs, but to Victor Langley's murder. Rick let out a low whistle. Jesus, Danny. This is bad. If the cops see this, I don't need them to see it, not yet. I folded my hands together. I just need Elena to think they will. Rick met my gaze, a slow smirk forming. You want to turn the tables on her? I nodded. For once. Back to the present, I stood up from my chair, grabbing my phone from the table. With a casual flick, I opened my messages and turned the screen toward her. A single text message displayed, to Detective Hartwell, sent, 10:15 p.m. I have evidence linking Elena Mercer to the murder of Victor Langley. Attached files incoming. Elena's smirk faltered. You wouldn't. I let the message hang in the air between us. Try me. She set her glass down, hands clenched into fists. Danny, listen to me. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. I took a slow step forward, lowering my voice. No, Elena. You don't know what you got yourself into. For the first time since this all began, I saw something new in her eyes. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't manipulation. It was fear. A slow smirk curled my lips. Checkmate. To be continued. The hunter becomes the hunted. Elena stared at my phone, her lips parting slightly as if to argue, to spin another web of lies. But she knew. She could see it in my face, in my stance, in the steady way I held her gaze. She had lost control. You really think turning me in will fix everything? She asked, her voice quiet but laced with something dangerous. You think the police will just believe you? I shrugged, slipping my phone back into my pocket. Doesn't really matter what they believe. I turned toward the bar cart, taking my time pouring a drink. What matters is the evidence, and I've made sure there's plenty of it. The ice clinked in the glass as I lifted it to my lips. I could feel her watching me, calculating, assessing. Elena had spent years perfecting her lies, twisting reality to suit her needs, but this time I had done the work. I had built a case, left no stone unturned. She was trapped, and she knew it. Elena, I said, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. How long did you think this was going to last? How long did you think you could play all these men, live all these lives before it caught up to you? She inhaled sharply. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, I cut in, turning to face her. I was your safety net, your loyal little husband, the fool who would always forgive you. But here's the thing, Elena. I took a slow sip, savoring the moment. Even the most patient fool has his limits. A tense silence filled the room. Then something shifted in her expression. The fear, the anger, it melted away, and what remained was a smile. Slow, calculated. You think this is over? She whispered. I didn't respond. She stepped closer, her perfume wrapping around me like a memory I wished I could forget. You think you've won? Her voice was soft, almost teasing. Oh, Danny. She tilted her head, those dark eyes locking onto mine. You have no idea what you've started. Hours later, I sat in my office, fingers drumming against my desk, eyes locked on the computer screen. Rick had just sent me an update. Alina Mercer. Missing. Not arrested. Not questioned. Gone. She had vanished like smoke, slipping through my fingers just when I thought I had cornered her. I exhaled slowly, pressing my fingers against my temples. I should have known. Elena was never the type to go down without a fight. And now, she was out there, watching, waiting. A single notification flashed on my phone. Unknown number, 1. New message. I hesitated before opening it. A picture appeared, a shot of my apartment building, taken from across the street. Then, a second message. Did you really think it would be that easy? My blood turned to ice. The game wasn't over. Not by a long shot. To be continued. Nowhere to run. Nowhere to hide. My hands tightened around my phone. The message stared back at me, taunting, daring me to react. Did you really think it would be that easy? I stood slowly, moving toward the window of my office. The street below was alive with the usual city chaos. Horns blaring, people walking, life moving on as if nothing had changed. But I knew better. Somewhere out there, Elena was watching me. I had underestimated her once. I wouldn't make that mistake again. With a steady breath, I pulled up Rick's number and hit call. He answered on the second ring. Tell me you've got something, I said, my voice low. Rick sighed on the other end. Bad news? She's a ghost. No credit card activity, no phone pings, nothing. It's like she doesn't exist anymore. That sounded about right. Elena always knew how to disappear when things got too hot. But this time, she wasn't just running, she was hunting. She sent me a message, I said, scanning the street again. A picture of my place. She's close. Rick cursed under his breath. Shit, you need to get out of there. I'm not running. Danny, she's dangerous. I know she's dangerous. I exhaled. And that's exactly why I need to end this. Now. There was silence on the other end before Rick finally spoke. All right. Then let's set a trap. Midnight. A game of shadows. Rick's plan was simple. Lure her out. Make her feel like she was in control. Then turn the tables. We set up at my apartment, keeping the lights dimmed. I sat in the living room, making sure I was visible through the large window. Rick waited in the next room, gun in hand, watching through a security feed he had set up earlier that day. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Then movement. A shadow across the street. Lingering. Waiting. Elena. I muttered under my breath. She was careful. I had to give her that. She didn't just walk up to the door. No, she was studying, calculating her next move. Then my phone vibrated. Another message. Open the door, Danny. I felt my pulse quicken. Rick's voice crackled in my earpiece. She's testing you, stay put. I ignored him. Instead, I typed, back. Why? So you can finish what you started? A few seconds later, her reply came, I never wanted to hurt you, but you forced my hand. Lies. Then come inside. Let's talk. Silence. Then the doorbell rang. Rick whispered, Careful. This isn't a social call. I walked to the door, every nerve in my body on edge. My fingers hovered over the handle. I unlocked it and pulled it open. No one was there, just an envelope. I bent down, picked it up, and opened it. Inside was a single note. Checkmate. And then, boom. The world exploded. To be continued, the explosion, the escape, and the truth. The blast sent me flying backward, my body slamming hard against the floor. My ears rang with a piercing whine, my vision swimming in a haze of dust and flickering light. The air was thick with smoke, the acrid stench of burning wood and scorched metal filling my lungs. Somewhere in the distance, I heard Rick shouting, "Danny! Danny, can you hear me?" I groaned, rolling onto my side. Pain shot through my ribs, but I forced myself up. My apartment was wrecked. Glass shattered, furniture splintered, walls scorched. The front door hung crooked on its hinges, a blackened scorch mark where the envelope had been. Elena had planned this. I staggered to my feet, coughing. "Rick!" My voice was hoarse. She set me up!" "No shit." Rick's face appeared through the smoke as he rushed in, gun drawn. "Come on, we need to move! Cops are gonna be all over this!" I barely had time to process before he grabbed my arm and hauled me toward the fire escape. We climbed down as sirens howled. In the distance, the glow of emergency lights bouncing off the nearby buildings. By the time we hit the alley, Rick pulled me into the shadows. "You good?" I nodded, sucking in a shaky breath. "Yeah, but Elena, she's always one step ahead." Rick's jaw tightened. "Not anymore." He pulled out his phone and handed it to me. "Look at this." I glanced at the screen. A paused. Security feed. It was grainy, but I could see my apartment from across the street. Rick hit play. A shadow moved near the doorway moments before the explosion. Then I saw her. Elena. She was dressed in black, her hair tied up, a hood masking most of her face. But it was her. I knew it. And she wasn't alone. A second figure emerged behind her, a tall man, muscular, wearing a dark coat. He handed her the envelope. And then they walked away together. A cold realization gripped my spine. She's not working alone. Rick nodded. That's what I was afraid of. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering. Who the hell was he? Was he another one of her lovers? Or was this something bigger, something I hadn't even begun to understand? And more importantly, I sat in the darkened alley, Rick's phone still clutched in my hand, watching the grainy footage over and over. Elena, the mysterious man, the envelope, the explosion. Rick crouched beside me, his eyes scanning the street for any sign of movement. "You seeing what I'm seeing?" I swallowed, my mind racing. "Yeah, she's not just running. She's orchestrating something." Rick let out a low whistle. "And that guy with her? He ain't just muscle. The way he moved, professional. This is bigger than just a cheating wife covering her tracks." My fingers tightened around the phone. She's playing a deeper game. Rick shot me a sideways glance. "Then I gotta ask, man, you still want to play?" I took a slow breath, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. Elena had lied to me for years. She had used me, manipulated me, turned my loyalty into a weapon against myself. And now she had tried to kill me. This wasn't just about catching her anymore. It wasn't about proving that I wasn't a fool. It was about ending this. I handed the phone back to Rick. "Yeah, I want to play." Rick grinned. "Then let's make our next move." Hours later, a dangerous offer Rick had spent 2 days digging into every lead we had. The mysterious man in the footage? Nothing. No facial recognition matches, no known associates of Elena's, no financial records. He was a ghost. But one thing we did know: Elena was back in the city. She had been spotted at a luxury penthouse downtown, anonymously rented, paid in cash. She wasn't hiding. She was waiting. And that meant she was expecting me. So I gave her what she wanted. The bar was upscale, the kind of place where deals were made over whiskey and secrets were whispered between the clink of ice. I walked in, my pulse steady, my mind clear. I spotted her immediately. Elena sat in a booth at the far end of the room, a glass of wine in her hand, her dark eyes locked onto me before I even reached her table. "Danny," she smiled. "I was wondering when you'd show up." I slid into the seat across from her. "Didn't have much of a choice. You made sure of that." Her lips curved slightly. If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead. I leaned forward. Maybe. But you don't want me dead. You want me involved. A flicker of something crossed her face. Surprise. That was good. That meant I was on the right track. I tapped the table. So, tell me, Elena, what's the real game here? She took a slow sip of her wine before setting the glass down gently. Then she smiled again. All right, Danny. You want the truth? She leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. You were never just my husband. You were my insurance policy. I stared at Elena, my mind racing. Insurance policy? She watched me carefully, her fingers tracing lazy circles on the rim of her wine glass. The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. I exhaled, keeping my voice steady. Explain. She tilted her head, amusement flickering in her eyes. Oh, Danny, you're a smart man. Haven't you figured it out yet? I didn't take the bait. I just waited. Elena sighed, then leaned back, swirling the wine in her glass. You always thought our marriage was about love. Maybe it was, at first. She paused, her lips curving slightly. But then I saw an opportunity, and I took it. I clenched my jaw. An opportunity for what? She set her glass down, her expression growing colder. To disappear. A chill ran through me. Disappear from who? She smiled again, but this time it didn't reach her eyes. People you don't want to meet. I took a deep breath, piecing it together. That guy in the video? He's not just some new lover, is he? Elena shook her head. No, he's the one I was running from. I frowned. Then why are you back? Her fingers drummed against the table, eyes darting around the bar. Then she leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. Because he doesn't just want me now, he wants you too. A past I didn't know. I had my entire body went still. Me? I repeated. Elena nodded. You got too close, Danny. When you started digging, when you found Victor Langley's murder, you walked right into something bigger than you can imagine. I could feel my pulse in my throat. What are you talking about? She exhaled. Victor wasn't just some random businessman. He was a fixer, a cleaner for a group of very powerful people. And the man in the video? She paused. That's his boss. I shook my head. No, this doesn't make sense. I was never involved in any of that. Elena gave me a sad smile. Oh, Danny, you were involved the moment you married me. For a moment, everything around me disappeared. The sounds of the bar, the clinking glasses, the low hum of conversation, it all faded into a dull roar in the back of my mind. I forced myself to speak. So what now? Elena's eyes darkened. Now we run. I let out a bitter laugh. Oh no, we are way past that. She reached for my hand. Danny, please, if we don't leave tonight, they will find us. And when they do... She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. I pulled my hand away, my voice low and firm. You made me a pawn in your game, Elena, but I'm done playing. She stared at me, something unreadable in her expression. Then you're already dead. A phone buzzed between us. Rick. I pulled it out and read the message. Get out. Now. I looked up just in time to see the man from the security footage step into the bar. His cold, calculating eyes locked onto mine. Elena's grip tightened on my wrist. Danny, she whispered. Run! To be continued? Time slowed. The man from the security footage, tall, broad, dressed in an unassuming dark suit, moved with quiet confidence as he entered the bar. His eyes scanned the room, precise, methodical, and then they landed on me. A flicker of recognition. A small smirk. He wasn't in a rush. He wasn't concerned. He already knew he had me. Elena's grip on my wrist tightened. Danny, listen to me. I yanked my arm away and stood. No, I'm done listening. Her eyes widened. Something, like fear flashing through them. You don't understand? No, I said, voice steady. I understand perfectly. I turned toward the man and took a step forward. If he wanted me, he wasn't going to get me running. He smiled, amused. Daniel Mercer. His voice was smooth, almost polite. It's good to finally meet you. I exhaled slowly. Can't say I feel the same. He chuckled, shaking his head. I respect a man who doesn't cower. He glanced at Elena, who was still frozen in place. Though I must say, your wife gave me a different impression. Elena flinched, and in that moment, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Guilt, not just fear, not just manipulation. Real guilt. She had done something worse than what I already knew. I looked back at the man. And you are? He smirked. Let's keep it simple. Call me Mr. Vale. I nodded. All right, Vale. You want to tell me why I'm suddenly on your hit list? He chuckled again, as if I had just made an inside joke. Hit list? No, Danny, you misunderstand. You're not a target. He tilted his head. You're an asset. My blood ran cold. What the hell does that mean? Vale sighed. I was content to let you live your quiet, oblivious life, but then you started digging. You started asking questions. And now? He smiled. Now you know too much. I felt my muscles tense. So what? You're here to kill me? Vale shook his head. Kill you? No. You're valuable, Danny, but only if you make the right choice. Elena's voice was a whisper. Danny, don't. Vale ignored her. You have two options, Mr. Mercer. One, you come with me, and we have a civil conversation about how you can be useful to us. He smiled. Or two, you leave this bar thinking you've escaped. He leaned in slightly. And then, somewhere down the line, when you least expect it, you disappear. The weight of his words pressed down on me like an iron vice. I had no good options. I glanced at Elena, and for the first time I saw the truth written all over her face. She had already made a deal. She had already chosen. I turned back to Vale. My heart was hammering in my chest, but I forced a smirk onto my face. All right, I said. Let's talk. Vale's smile widened. Good choice. As he gestured for me to follow, I cast one last look at Elena. She was still sitting there, her expression unreadable, but in her eyes, I saw the truth. She knew I wasn't coming back. Vale led me through the bar like he owned the place. No hesitation, no need to check his surroundings. He knew no one would stop him. The moment we stepped outside, a sleek black car was waiting at the curb. The driver didn't even glance at us as Vale opened the back door and gestured inside. After you, he said, his voice smooth as silk. I hesitated for half a second. Every instinct screamed at me not to get in that car. Then I felt it, the barrel of a gun pressing lightly against my lower back. I didn't turn around. Didn't need to. Elena. Get in, Danny, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I swallowed the rage boiling inside me and stepped into the car. Elena slid in beside me, her gun still hidden, but her presence radiating tension. Vale took his seat across from us, calm as ever, as the car pulled away from the curb. For a long moment, none of us spoke. The city lights blurred past, a twisted reflection of how fast my life had spiraled out of control. Then Vale exhaled, as if this were all a mild inconvenience. You should be thanking me, Danny. Most men in your position don't get options. I forced a laugh. Yeah? And what exactly are my options? Vale leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. You work for me. I snorted. And what would that involve? Cleaning up bodies? Taking the fall for someone else's crimes? Vale smiled. Nothing so crude. You're smart, Danny. Good at digging into things, and more importantly, you have a clean record. That makes you valuable. I frowned. What are you talking about? Elena shifted beside me, looking away. Vale's eyes sparkled with amusement. You still don't get it, do you? He gestured toward Elena. She didn't just cheat on you, Danny. She was using you. Marrying you wasn't about love. It was about cover. A respectable husband with a normal life. A safety net in case things went sideways. I turned to Elena, my voice tight. Tell me he's lying. She stayed silent. Vale chuckled. That's what I thought. Something inside me cracked. All those years. Every second I spent trying to forgive her, trying to believe she still loved me. It was all a lie. I exhaled slowly, forcing my emotions down. So let's say I agree. What's the job? Vale's smile widened. We need someone on the inside, a man with access, someone who can keep things running smoothly when, unfortunate, situations arise. I clenched my fists. And if I say no? Elena finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. Then they kill you. The words hung in the air like a noose tightening around my neck. Vale shrugged. Harsh, but necessary. You know too much now, Danny, and we can't have loose ends. I took a deep breath, my mind racing. I had no way out, no backup, and the woman I had once loved, the woman I had forgiven over and over, had led me straight into a death trap. Fine. I forced a smirk onto my face. Well, I said, leaning back against the seat, if I'm going to sell my soul, I might as well negotiate the price. Vale grinned. Now you're speaking my language. Elena let out a shaky breath, looking at me with something close to relief. I met her gaze. She thought I was giving in. She thought I was going to be theirs. She had no idea that I was already planning how to burn their entire world to the ground. To be continued, I played the part well. For the rest of the car ride, I listened as Vale outlined my so-called new role. I was to be their inside man, an investigator for their interests, someone who could uncover problems before they became liabilities. Translation? I'd be the guy who cleaned up their messes. Of course, Vale said smoothly. Trust is earned, not given. So we'll start you off with something simple, a test. I smirked. A job interview, huh? What happens if I fail? Vale chuckled. Then you're no longer useful, and we don't keep things that aren't useful. The threat hung in the air, unspoken, but clear. The car finally slowed, pulling into an underground parking garage. The doors locked with a soft click. Vale gestured to Elena. Stay here. Danny and I will talk. She hesitated. I should be involved. Vale gave her a sharp look. You've done enough. Something flickered across her face. Fear? Regret? I didn't care anymore. The door opened, and two men stood outside, waiting. Armed. Let's go, Danny, Vale said. I stepped, out keeping my face blank, my pulse steady. This was it, the first move. The test. The elevator took us up to a penthouse suite, floor-to-ceiling windows, expensive furniture, a space designed for power plays. A man was already waiting for us, mid-50s, heavy-set, balding. He sat in an armchair, a tumbler of whiskey in his hand, his face tight with nerves. This, Vale said, is Peter Calloway, an accountant with a recent problem. Peter swallowed hard. His voice shook. Please, I didn't mean to. Vale held up a hand. Save it. He turned to me. Peter was caught skimming money. Not from us. From a different business partner. I frowned. And they haven't killed him yet because... Vale smirked. Because I told them we had someone new to handle these things. Someone who understands leverage. Peter's hands trembled. I can fix it. I can pay it back. Vale ignored him, watching me closely. So, Danny, how do we solve this problem? I exhaled slowly. I could feel the trap closing around me. They were testing me. seeing what kind of man I really was. I crouched in front of Peter, keeping my voice calm. "How much did you take?" 60 grand. His voice cracked. I was going to put it back. I tilted my head. "And if I let you go, what's stopping you from doing it again?" Peter's eyes darted to Vale. "I swear I won't." I grabbed his wrist, hard. "Don't look at him. Look at me." Peter's breath hitched. I stared into his panicked eyes, forcing him to see me, not Vale. Not the men with guns. Just me. "I don't believe in killing for sport," I said quietly. "But I do believe in consequences." Peter swallowed. What? Do you want?" I held his gaze. "Double it," he blinked. "What? You stole 60 grand?" I said. "Then you owe 120. Paid back. Now." Vale raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Peter paled. I don't have that kind of money." "Then, get it." My voice didn't waver. "Sell your house. Your car. Take out a loan. Doesn't matter. You have 48 hours. Peter trembled. And then?" I smiled. "Then you never steal from the wrong people again." For a long moment there was silence. Then Vale started laughing. "I like him," he said. "Very pragmatic." He clapped me on the back. "Fine. We'll give Peter his little deadline." He turned to the guards. "Escort him out." Peter all but collapsed as they dragged him away. Once the door shut, Vale smirked at me. "I have to admit I expected you to crack." I shrugged. "Dead men don't pay back debts," Vale grinned. "Smart man." He leaned in slightly. "You just bought yourself a little more time, Danny." I forced a smirk. "Good. Because I like to play the long game." What Vale didn't know, an hour later I was back at my apartment, alone. I sat in the dark, replaying everything in my head. Vale thought I was just another pawn. Just another man who had been backed into a corner and bent to his will. But he was wrong. I didn't give Peter that deadline to be merciful. I did it because I needed an ally. Someone desperate, someone with something to lose. And Peter, he was going to help. Me burn Vale's entire operation to the ground. I sat in my apartment, the city lights flickering in the distance. The weight of what I had just done pressed down on me, but it didn't feel like defeat. It felt like a strategic maneuver. Vale was playing a game with me, but what he didn't know was that I wasn't playing for his side. I was playing for mine. Peter Calloway, the terrified accountant, was my key. He had no idea what kind of trouble he was really in, but by the time I was done with him, he'd be more than just a pawn in Vale's game. I needed a plan. The phone rang, breaking my thoughts. I didn't recognize the number, but I knew it wasn't a wrong number. It couldn't be. I picked it up. "Danny Mercer?" A woman's voice came through the line, smooth but sharp. "Speaking," I said, my voice neutral. "I'm Agent Simone Harper. I work for a task force you're not aware of. I've been tracking Vale and his organization for months now." My pulse quickened, but I kept my composure. "And what does this have to do with me?" She paused. "We've been watching you, Mr. Mercer. You've got something Vale wants. And while he's busy underestimating you, we think you can be useful. To us." I narrowed my eyes. "And why should I trust you?" "I know you don't trust anyone," she said, her tone laced with understanding. "But the truth is, you're already in deeper than you realize. So, I'm offering you an opportunity. Help us take down Vale, and you'll walk away free. No more being a pawn in anyone's game. No more running." I hesitated. "What's the catch?" "I'll be honest with you," Harper said. "There is no easy way out, but we can give you the tools to take down Vale's operation. And if you help us, you'll have a chance at redemption." I rubbed my hand over my face. "And what happens if I refuse?" "You'll keep playing the game. Only Vale will be the one controlling the rules." I paused for a long moment, weighing my options. But deep down, I already knew the answer. I had nothing to lose anymore. "I'm in," I said, my voice steady. But I need leverage. I need someone inside Vale's organization who will trust me. Harper's voice softened. I know exactly who you're thinking of. But be careful. He's a wild card, Danny. If he's going to trust you, you'll have to prove you're worth it. The line clicked off, and I was left with the eerie silence of my apartment. The meeting the next day, I found myself sitting across from Peter Calloway in a rundown diner, the kind of place where no one looked twice at you. I slid a folder across the table. This is everything you need to know about Vale's operation. The people involved, the accounts, the hidden assets. But there's something you need to understand, Peter. He glanced at me, his face pale, sweat dotting his forehead. What's that? You're not just going to pay Vale back. I leaned forward, my eyes narrowing. You're going to help me destroy him. Peter swallowed, looking terrified. I can't! He'll kill me! No. I cut him off. You'll be killed if you stay with him, but if you help me, we'll burn his empire to the ground. His hands trembled as he picked up the folder, flipping through the pages. This is everything. How do you expect me to help with this? I leaned back in my chair, watching him closely. You know Vale's inner circle. You've worked with them for years. I'm going to need you to feed me information. I'll need you to help us get access to his files, his people, his network. Peter's gaze darted nervously around the diner. You're asking me to put my life in your hands. Do you even realize what that means? I nodded. Yeah, I do. But you have a choice. You can keep running scared, hoping to avoid Vale's wrath, or you can help me take him down. And maybe, just maybe, we'll both survive this. He hesitated, his fingers gripping the edge of the table, his mind racing. Finally, he looked up at me. Okay, I'll help you, but I need one thing in return. What's that? I want protection. I want to know that if this goes south, I'm not left in the dust. I didn't hesitate. You'll have it. I'll make sure of it. Peter nodded slowly, his decision made. Good, I said. Now let's get to work. The hunt begins. The following days were a whirlwind of late-night meetings, code-breaking, and secret exchanges. Peter proved to be surprisingly resourceful, his insider knowledge invaluable as I slowly started to piece together Vale's empire. Every secret, every weakness, every crack in the foundation. But as I dug deeper, I realized something. Vale wasn't just a powerful criminal. He was connected, and I wasn't just going after him. I was going after everyone. The deeper I went, the more I uncovered corrupt politicians, dirty cops, shady businessmen. Vale was the tip of a massive, intricate network. I couldn't take him down alone, but with Peter's help and Agent Harper pulling strings from the shadows, I had a fighting chance. I had to stay one step ahead of Vale, one step ahead of everyone, and the clock was ticking. The air was thick with tension as I sat in the dimly lit office, watching Peter pore over the documents I had given him. His fingers trembled slightly as he flipped through the pages, the weight of what he was about to do settling in. You're sure about this? I asked, my voice low. Peter nodded, but his eyes were darting around, his thoughts running faster than his body could keep up with. I don't think I have a choice. Vale's not the type to forgive mistakes like mine. You're my only way out. I leaned back in my chair, staring at him, wondering if I had just made another deal with the devil. But there was no turning back. You've got one shot at this, I said. If you mess up, Vale will know you turned on him, and I won't be able to help you. Peter's gaze hardened. I'm not messing this up. He slammed the folder shut, as though sealing his fate in that one action. The first strike. The days blurred into each other as I orchestrated the first move in our plan. Peter and I were running a delicate game, feeding Vale misinformation, feeding him false hope that he had everything under control. But behind the scenes, I was working with Agent Harper and her task force to gather everything we could on his organization. Vale's empire wasn't just a house of cards. It was a labyrinth, a network of operatives and double dealings so vast it seemed impossible to topple. But I had learned something from Vale. Everything has a weakness. I just needed to find it. Late one night, Peter reached out to me with urgent news. "It's time," he said, his voice barely a whisper on the other end of the line. "We've got a window?" I didn't hesitate. "Where?" "A warehouse on the outskirts of the city. It's where they're storing their next shipment. Guns, drugs, a whole arsenal. Vale's people will be there in force." I glanced at my watch. "How long do we have?" 3 hours, Peter said. "You need to move fast. They're expecting a big payout, and they're distracted. If you hit now, we can cripple their operation before they even realize it." I took a breath, considering the risks. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about taking everything Vale had built and watching it burn. "We're doing this," I said. "I'll be there in an hour." The warehouse. The night air was cold and crisp as I approached the warehouse, my heart pounding in my chest. This was no simple heist. We were walking a razor-thin line between survival and certain death. Peter was already inside, his information proving invaluable as he guided me to the back of the building. There was a small entrance, unguarded, just as he had promised. I motioned. For the team, Agent Harper's people, along with a few others I had recruited along the way, to take their positions. We moved quietly, no sound but the occasional shuffle of feet against the concrete floor. Inside, it was eerily silent. The hum of industrial equipment echoed in the background, the scent of chemicals lingering in the air. "Get to the control room," I whispered to Harper's agents. "I'll deal with the men in the warehouse." As we crept forward, my mind raced. We couldn't afford any slip-ups. "Peter, where are they?" I muttered into my earpiece. "Near the back, by the second storage bay," he replied. "4 of them. They've got guns. Don't make a sound." I motioned to my team to get into position, their weapons ready. Slowly we moved closer, the air thick with tension. And then, a door slammed open. A guard stepped out, his hand reaching for his gun. I acted on instinct, drawing mine and firing before he could even react. The shot echoed through the warehouse, but it didn't stop us. We moved quickly, taking down the rest of the guards with precision, each shot a testament to the training I'd received over the years. "Clear," I whispered, signaling to the others. I stepped forward, adrenaline pumping, and then I saw it. The shipment. Boxes upon boxes of guns, drugs, and unmarked bills. The kind of stuff that Vale's empire thrived on. This was it. "Set the charges," I said, my voice low and steady. A small explosive was placed at the heart of the shipment, and we began to move back toward the entrance. But as we turned to leave, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A figure. Vale, standing at the back of the warehouse, watching me with a smile that sent chills down my spine. The confrontation. "Nice of you to join us, Danny," Vale said, his voice cutting through the silence. I froze. He wasn't alone. 2 of his men flanked him, both armed and ready. "How did you know?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, my mind racing for an escape route. Vale's smile widened. "I've been watching you, Danny. You're good, too good. But there's something you forgot." I didn't like the sound of that. "What's that?" "You made a deal with a rat." He gestured toward Peter, who was standing behind me, his face pale. I turned just in time to see Peter drop the gun he had been holding. He was with them. The shot rang out like a thunderclap, echoing off the concrete walls of the warehouse. Peter's body jerked backward, a look of utter disbelief frozen on his face as he crumpled to the ground. For a moment, the world stood still. Vale's eyes widened, his lips curling into a sinister grin as he slowly clapped his hands. "Well played, Danny," he said, his voice dripping with mock admiration. You really do have a taste for the dramatic, don't you? My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at Peter's lifeless body. I'd just killed him. The man who had been my ally, my source of inside information, the one person who had helped me get this far, but he had betrayed me. And in this world, there was no room for betrayal. Not if you wanted to survive. Vale stepped. Closer, his gaze shifting between me and the body at my feet. I have to admit, I didn't expect you to make it this far. But now you've really gone and made a mess. I steadied my gun, aiming it at Vale. It's over, Vale. You've lost, he chuckled. You're still underestimating me. You've been doing it since the beginning. Maybe. I narrowed my eyes, tightening my grip on the gun. But not anymore. I motioned to the men who were still alive, the ones I had taken down earlier. I'll finish this, but you'll get to watch. You're not going anywhere. Vale raised an eyebrow, the grin never leaving his face. You think I'm the one in trouble? I didn't respond, keeping my weapon trained on him. Suddenly his phone buzzed. Vale's eyes flickered with a brief moment of uncertainty before he answered it. What? His voice had turned sharp. He paused, his expression darkening as he listened. Then, without warning, he slammed the phone down. No! No! His gaze snapped back to me, his demeanor shifting from confidence to something darker. It seems the game's not over yet. You've got another player in the mix. I hesitated. Who? Vale's smile returned, colder this time. Someone you never saw coming. Someone who's been pulling the strings all along. Before I could ask who he meant, the warehouse doors burst open with a deafening crash. The unexpected arrival in. The doorway stood a figure cloaked in shadow, the kind of presence that made the air feel heavier. It was a woman, tall and confident, with a sharp gaze that seemed to pierce through the darkness. Her features were obscured by the dim lighting, but I knew right away that she wasn't just anyone. She was important. Nice to see you've made it this far, Danny, she said, her voice low and smooth. Vale's eyes widened, his earlier bravado slipping away. No! You can't be... But she cut him off with a chilling laugh. Oh, I most certainly am! The woman stepped into the light, revealing herself fully. Her sharp cheekbones and icy blue eyes held a cold authority that sent a shiver down my spine. Her appearance was almost regal, a contrast to the grimy warehouse setting. Who are you? I demanded, my grip on the gun tightening. She looked at me with a mixture of amusement and disdain. You really don't know, do you? I've been watching you for months, Danny. You've been playing checkers while I've been playing chess. Vale's voice trembled slightly. You're the one who's been pulling the strings? All this time? The woman smiled, her lips curling into a predatory grin. Yes, Vale. You were just a means to an end. The real game has always been bigger than you. I was confused. Who was this woman? And why had she waited until now to make her move? Vale's eyes flickered to me, then back to her. You were never supposed to be here, she laughed. Again, the sound echoing through the cold space. And yet, here I am. She turned to me, her gaze sharp. You were always a useful tool, Danny, but now you're just a liability. I felt my blood run cold. What do you mean, a liability? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she glanced at Vale, who was slowly backing away, a look of fear creeping into his face. You think you're in control, don't you? She said, her voice colder than ice. But the truth is, you've never had control. Not of your life, not of this game, not of anything. Before I could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps filled the room. More figures emerged from the shadows, circling around us, the twistas. The figures came into the light. I realized who they were, Harper's team, but they weren't on my side. They were on her side. The woman stepped closer, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "Agent Simone Harper," she said, nodding toward the lead agent. "You've done well. All of this has been part of the plan. Getting close to Vale, feeding him false information, using you to take out the competition." Harper's face remained unreadable, but I could see the shift in her eyes. "She was in on this too. But I'm afraid you've outlived your usefulness, Danny," the woman continued, her smile widening. "You were never meant to win. You were just a pawn, and now it's time for you to lose the game." The warehouse felt even colder now, the air thick with betrayal. I stood frozen, surrounded by those who had played me, used me, and now planned to dispose of me. The woman, her icy blue eyes fixed on me with calculating precision, stepped closer, the weight of her gaze more suffocating than any physical threat. "I've been watching you, Danny," she said, her voice almost patronizing. "You've been a piece in my game for a long time, and you never even knew it." I clenched my jaw, trying to force the anger back down. "Who the hell are you?" I demanded, though I already suspected the answer. She smiled, slow and deliberate. "You can call me Cassandra. And as for who I am, well, let's just say I'm the one who's been making all the moves behind the scenes." I glanced at Harper, whose face remained as unreadable as ever. "So you were the one pulling the strings? Feeding me false intel, manipulating Vale, setting me up to take down his empire?" Cassandra gave a brief nod, her gaze sweeping over me with a hint of amusement. "Exactly. Vale was a means to an end. You, Danny, were just another tool I used to make sure things played out in my favor." I could feel the bile rising in my throat. I had trusted Harper, had trusted them all, and now it was clear. None of it had been real. Every move I made, every moment I thought I was in control, had been a carefully orchestrated trap. But I wasn't going down like this. I don't. "Care what game you've been playing," I said, my voice steady. "You're not getting away with this." Cassandra chuckled softly. "Oh, Danny, you don't understand, do you? The game was over the moment you walked into that warehouse. You were never going to win." I knew she was right, but that didn't mean I was going to surrender. In one swift motion, I reached into my jacket, pulling out the small explosive device I had hidden there. It was a last resort, something I had kept on hand for situations like this. Desperate measures. Cassandra's eyes narrowed as I pressed the button, activating the countdown. "Don't even think about it," she warned, her voice cold. "You'll just be sealing your own fate." But I didn't back down. "I'm not dying alone, Cassandra. You're going to burn with me if I have to." Her lips curled into a smirk, but there was a flicker of concern in her eyes. "You think you can outsmart me? After everything you've done, after everything I've made you do?" "I don't need to outsmart you," I said, stepping toward her, my grip tightening on the device. "I just need to make sure you understand that you're not untouchable." Her smirk faltered for just a moment, but it was enough. The reckoning, suddenly Harper moved. She lunged at me, her arms outstretched, but it was too late. I had already pressed the button. The timer on the device beeped once, then twice. Cassandra's eyes flashed with realization, her arrogance crumbling in an instant. "You—" Before she could finish the sentence, the ground beneath us shook. A massive explosion erupted outside the warehouse, sending a shockwave through the building. The walls cracked, and the floor trembled beneath our feet. Harper ducked to the ground, covering her head, while Cassandra stumbled backward, her eyes wide with fury. I wasn't planning on blowing us all up, but I had made sure the explosion was big enough to make it seem like we were all going down together. A distraction, a chance. The blast had taken out the external security and created chaos. But more importantly, it bought me the time I needed. As dust filled the air and the warehouse fell into a momentary lull, I sprinted toward the nearest exit, my heart pounding in my chest. The chase, I could hear them behind me. Their footsteps, sharp and hurried, echoed in the hollow space. I couldn't risk looking back. Cassandra's voice rang out in the chaos. "Don't let him get away. He doesn't get to walk away from this." I reached the loading dock and saw my escape, Harper's. Car parked just outside. It was my one shot. If I could get to that car, I could make my way to safety. And maybe, just maybe, find a way to take Cassandra down for good. But as I reached the car, I felt a sharp pain in my side. I stumbled, my vision blurring for a second, but I pushed through. Harper. She'd shot me. I turned, my breath ragged, and saw her standing there, her gun raised. "This is the end for you, Danny," she said, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. "Not yet," I said, forcing myself to keep my legs under me. My hand brushed the handle of the car's door, but the pain in my side was too much. I couldn't think straight. And then, the sound of tires screeching cut through the tension. A black SUV came roaring into view, its headlights blinding in the darkness. The vehicle skidded to a halt beside me. A door swung open, and a man in a suit with a gun in his hand stepped out. "Get in," he barked. I didn't need to be told twice. I dove into the back seat, slamming the door behind me. The SUV sped off, leaving Harper and Cassandra in the dust. The SUV swerved through the streets, its engine purring as the city lights flashed by in a blur. My side throbbed with every movement, the pain gnawing at me like a hungry beast, but I barely felt it. Adrenaline was doing its job, pushing me forward despite the injury. I looked at the man in the front seat. He was calm, almost eerily so, his posture rigid and professional. He wore a tailored suit that looked like it belonged in another world, a world where the stakes were higher, the players smarter, and the consequences far more deadly. "Who are you?" I asked again, my voice strained. "You know my name, but I don't know a damn thing about you." The man's lips curled into a small, enigmatic smile. "You wouldn't recognize me, not yet, but you will, soon enough." I wanted to press him further, to demand answers, but the weight of everything that had just happened was crashing down on me. Peter was dead. Harper had betrayed me. Cassandra, the mastermind behind it all, had set the pieces in motion long before I'd even realized the game had started. And now, this stranger, this new player, was offering me a lifeline. But I had no idea what his motives were. The SUV made a sharp turn, and I caught a glimpse of the city skyline, its silhouette framed by the dark sky. We were leaving the industrial districts behind and entering a more polished part of the city, the kind of place where power, money, and influence ruled. "Where are we going?" I asked, my suspicion growing. The man didn't answer at first. He just kept driving, his focus unwavering. It wasn't until we turned onto a secluded road far from the city center that he finally spoke again. "You need to recover first," he said, his voice calm, as if we were discussing the weather. "We'll take care of your wounds. Then, we'll discuss how we're going to deal with Cassandra." I narrowed my eyes. "And what's your stake in all of this? Why do you care about Cassandra?" He met my gaze through the rearview mirror, his expression unreadable. "Because she's playing a much larger game than you realize, Danny. She's not just some rogue operative. She's tied into something deeper, bigger, and it's something that could ruin everything you're trying to protect." I gritted my teeth, my mind racing. "And what would you want me to do about it?" "Help us stop her," he said simply. "We need your skills. You're already inside. You know her better than anyone." A deal with the devil we arrived at. A sleek, modern building tucked away in a quiet part of the city. The kind of place where no one would ever think to look, and certainly where no one would find us. The man led me inside, his pace unhurried, as though we had all the time in the world. He guided me through a long corridor into a spacious, minimalist room. It was stark and sterile, but there was an efficiency to it. Everything was placed with purpose, not for aesthetics. "Take a seat," he said, gesturing to an armchair in the center of the room. I collapsed into the chair, my side burning. and I couldn't help but notice how much more at ease he was than I felt. I had no idea if I could trust him, but right now, he was my only option. He walked over to a small table and grabbed a medical kit, setting it down beside me. "Let me patch you up," he said without asking. I didn't have the energy to argue, so I leaned back, biting back a wince as he began to work on the wound in my side. His movements were efficient, surgical, as though he'd done this 1,000 times before. Once he was done, he stepped back and sat across from me, folding his hands together. "Cassandra's going to be a problem, Danny. More than you realize. You've only scratched the surface of what she's capable of." I met his eyes, trying to read him. "What are you getting at?" The man leaned forward slightly, his gaze intense. "I'm offering you an alliance, a chance to take down Cassandra and everything she stands for. But it's going to require more than just the skills you've shown so far. This is a war, not a quick fight. And in a war, you need an army." I stared at him, the weight of his words sinking in. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. It wasn't just about getting revenge on Vale or bringing down Cassandra's empire. This was about something much bigger than I had ever imagined. Something that threatened everything I'd been fighting for. "What kind of army?" I asked cautiously. The man smiled again, but this time there was no warmth in it, only cold calculation. "A very well-connected one. We've been building it for years. Now it's time to move." I shook my head, disbelief creeping in. "And you want me to join you in this army?" "Yes." He looked at me with unwavering certainty. "You've seen how this game works. You've felt the sting of betrayal. You know the cost of playing it, but if you join us, you'll have the power to make the rules. You'll have the chance to destroy Cassandra from the inside out." The air in the room was thick with anticipation. I stood before the man who had offered me a way out, or perhaps a way deeper into the labyrinth of betrayal and power. My wounds had healed enough for me to think straight, but that didn't mean my thoughts weren't clouded. The choice ahead of me was a dangerous one that could make or break everything I'd fought for. I looked out the window of the sterile room, the city lights flickering beneath me like stars, each one representing a life, a story, a consequence. I had been caught up in this mess for so long, always reacting, always a step behind. But now, for the first time, I had the chance to choose the path forward, and yet the weight of that decision felt suffocating. "I'm not a fool," I said, breaking the silence. The man had been quiet, waiting for me to speak, to make up my mind. But the longer I stood there, the clearer it became. I was tired of being in the dark. "I know you're not," the man said, his voice calm, the slightest hint of approval in his tone. "But there's one thing you need to understand, Danny. You've been playing in a game where the rules are made by people who are always one step ahead. If you want to make it out alive, if you want to actually win, you need to think bigger." I turned back to him, narrowing my eyes. "And you think I'm ready for that? After everything that's happened?" He met my gaze with an intensity that almost felt like a challenge. "I think you've been more ready than you realize. Cassandra thinks she's playing a game of chess, but it's actually a game of poker. She's bluffing, Danny, and you have the winning hand whether you see it or not." I swallowed the lump in my throat. Was this really the moment where everything turned around? Was I really going to be the one to take down Cassandra? To end her reign of control and manipulation? But as the man's words echoed in my mind, something else gnawed at me. The game wasn't over. Not yet. The plan over. The next few days, I met with the man who had finally introduced himself as Dominic and began to learn about the organization he was a part of. They were deeper than I had imagined, their reach stretching into the highest echelons of government, business, and the underworld. Their goal? To keep the world in balance. But the truth was more complicated than that. Dominic wasn't just offering me a way to take down Cassandra. He was offering me a chance to reshape the entire system that had allowed her to thrive. He wanted me to help him pull the strings, to join forces with a network of powerful players who controlled the very forces that governed the world. It was intoxicating. The power, the control, the idea of actually being in charge. But it also terrified me. Because with power came the very thing that had destroyed me in the first place: betrayal. I wasn't sure I could trust Dominic, not completely. He seemed too confident, too calculated. There was no room for mistakes in his world, no room for mercy or second chances. But could I afford to be merciful? Could I afford to not make a deal with someone who held all the cards? There was only one way forward, I realized. The moment of truth. The night before I was supposed to make my decision, I went out for a walk, trying to clear my head. The cool air of the city wrapped around me like a cloak, but even in the chill I felt the heat of the choices that awaited me. I found myself walking toward a place I hadn't been in a long time, my old apartment. It felt surreal walking up those stairs, knowing that everything had changed. This was the place where I'd once believed I had everything figured out. Before the betrayals, before the lies, before the game had consumed me. I reached the door, my hand hovering over the handle. It felt wrong to go inside, as though the man I was now, whoever that was, didn't belong here anymore. But I opened it anyway. The apartment was just as I remembered. The same cracked walls, the same dust on the furniture. It was the last vestige of a life that had been lost. And in the back of my mind, I couldn't help but wonder if I'd ever get it back. My thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. I turned, instinctively reaching for the gun that was tucked into my waistband. But as I opened it, I saw a face I hadn't expected to see. Harper. She was standing in the doorway, looking just as weary as I felt. Her eyes were tired, her shoulders slumped as though the weight of everything was starting to crush her too. "What do you want?" I asked, the words leaving my mouth sharper than I intended. "I came to talk," she said, her voice low. I don't expect you to forgive me, Danny. I never thought I'd get to explain myself, but I couldn't leave things the way they were." I eyed her, the anger still simmering beneath my skin, but also something else, something that made me hesitate. "Explain?" I repeated, my voice flat. The room fell silent as I stood facing Harper, my decision hanging in the air like a blade ready to drop. I didn't know if I could trust her, but the weight of the choice was suffocating. Everything had led to this moment, the web of lies, betrayals, and half-truths spun by the people I thought I could trust. But now, there was a chance to rewrite the story, a chance to break free. Harper's eyes flickered with something close to desperation. She hadn't come here to apologize, no. She had come because she knew what was at stake. The same thing I had come to realize. We were all caught in a web that had been woven long before we ever met, and the only way out was to burn the whole thing down. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Harper," I said, my voice low, heavy with the tension that still clung to us. "But I'll be damned if I don't use this chance to take control of my own life." Her face tightened, but she nodded as if she had expected this answer. "I wouldn't ask for your forgiveness, but I know you won't make the same mistakes I did." I felt a pang of bitterness, but I pushed it aside. I didn't have the luxury of holding on to grudges anymore. Whatever this was, this new reality, I had to walk through it, no matter who was standing at my side. There was a long pause where neither of us spoke. I could feel the storm brewing inside me, the rage, the confusion, the uncertainty. But beneath it all was a fire, a desire to finally reclaim my life, to take back the pieces that had been stolen. "I'm done playing by their rules," I said finally, the weight of the words settling on my chest. "I'm done being a pawn in anyone's game." Harper looked at me, her eyes searching my face as if looking for something she wasn't sure she would find. Then what's the next move? She asked, her voice softer now. I turned toward the window, gazing out at the city lights. The world below looked different now, distant, cold. I wasn't sure if I was ready to face the consequences of my choices, but I knew one thing for certain. This was my fight now. I'm going to take down Cassandra, I said, my words firm. But I'm not going to do it alone. The next few days passed in a blur. I contacted Dominic, ready to take the plunge and join his network of operatives. It was a dangerous game he was offering me, but it was a game I was no longer afraid to play. When I met him again, this time at an undisclosed location, a private high-tech facility buried deep beneath the city, I felt the weight of his expectations. He didn't waste time on pleasantries, immediately laying out the stakes. "We've been watching Cassandra for years," he said, his voice a quiet hum of authority. "We know what she's after, and we've been waiting for someone like you to make the final move." I leaned forward, meeting his eyes. "What's her play?" Dominic's lips curled into a grim smile. "Cassandra's after something more than power. She's playing a long game, a game that could change everything. But she doesn't know we've been setting our own pieces in motion." I paused, digesting the implications. "So, what do you need from me?" "You've already infiltrated her world," he replied. "You know her better than anyone. We need you to gather intelligence, disrupt her operations, and turn her closest allies against her. You'll be the spearhead of this operation." His words weren't comforting. There was no room for second-guessing, no room for mercy. But in that moment, I knew I had no other choice. "All right," I said, my voice steady. "Let's do it." Unraveling the web over the next few weeks, the operation unfolded in ways I hadn't anticipated. With Dominic's resources and Harper's inside knowledge, I was able to penetrate Cassandra's empire from within. I took on multiple identities, all while staying one step ahead of her. But it wasn't just about gathering intel. It was about breaking her down piece by piece until nothing remained. Cassandra had built her empire on manipulation, on lies, on the trust of people like me. And I was going to burn it all to the ground. Every time I made a move, every time I planted a seed of doubt or gathered crucial information, I felt the walls closing in on her. She wasn't the calculating mastermind I had once thought she was. She was vulnerable, exposed. She just didn't know it yet, but as the pieces of her empire began to crumble, so did the line between right and wrong. I had become a force to be reckoned with, a shadow in the dark, playing the very game I had once tried to escape. There was no way out now. No clean hands. The confrontation one night, I received a call from Dominic. His voice was tense. Something about the way he spoke told me this wasn't just another update. "We've got a lead on Cassandra," he said, his tone urgent. "She's planning to make a final move, and we need you to be ready." I knew what that meant. It was time for the final confrontation. The days after the fall of Cassandra's empire were filled with silence. The kind of silence that settles over everything once the storm has passed. For once, the world felt still. But beneath the surface, I could sense the chaos brewing, waiting to be unleashed. I hadn't expected things to change overnight. There was no triumphant moment where the world was set right again. No clean break from the life I had led. The reality was messier than that. It was a constant balancing act, trying to stay one step ahead of the consequences of my actions. The power structures I had fought to tear down didn't just vanish. They adapted. They shifted. And I had to adapt with them, or risk being consumed by the very forces I'd sought to control. Harper and I stayed in contact, our alliance solidified by the chaos we had helped create. She had her own plans, her own goals, but there was an understanding between us. We were no longer pawns in someone else's game, but the truth was, we had no real idea of what the future held. Every step forward felt like we were walking blindfolded, hoping the next one wouldn't be our last. The ghosts of the past, it wasn't long before I realized that the ghosts of my past hadn't really left me. Cassandra might have been out of the picture, but the wreckage of everything she had built was still there. And, buried deep in the rubble, were the people I had once cared about. The ones I had hurt along the way. I couldn't avoid the truth, forever. Sooner or later, the people I had betrayed would come for answers, for closure. And deep down, I knew I owed them that much. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't just break the person being betrayed. It fractures everything around them, and I was no different. I decided to visit the one person I'd been avoiding the most, the one who had been there for me before everything had gone to hell. My mother. Her apartment was a quiet place, tucked away in a neighborhood that seemed a world apart from the chaos I had been living in. The smell of home-cooked food lingered in the air as I knocked on the door, trying to ignore the knot in my stomach. When she opened the door, her face softened, but there was something else there. Too, a wariness. She hadn't seen me in months, not since the whole mess had unfolded, not since I had walked away from the life she had tried to protect me from. "Danny," she said softly, stepping aside to let me in. "I wasn't sure you'd come back." "I should have," I admitted, stepping inside. "I've been a mess. I don't know if I'll ever be able to fix everything I've done." She didn't respond right away, simply led me to the kitchen where the familiar scent of soup simmering on the stove filled the room. We sat across from each other at the table, the silence stretching between us. "I've been watching the news," she said finally, her voice low, careful. "What happened with Cassandra? And Harper? All of it." I met her gaze, my heart heavy. "It's done, Mom. Cassandra's gone. But I'm not sure I'm done either." She sighed, rubbing her temples as if trying to erase the worry from her face. "You were always so smart, Danny. I always thought you'd make the right choices, but somewhere along the way, you lost yourself. And now—" She trailed off, not sure how to finish. "I know," I whispered. "I lost myself a long time ago, but I'm trying to find my way back. I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I need you to know that I'm trying." She studied me for a long moment before nodding, her eyes softening. "You don't need to ask for forgiveness, but you do need to make things right. For yourself, Danny, because if you don't, nothing will ever feel like it's over." A new deal, the conversations with my mother, as painful as they were, became a turning point. I realized that while I had taken down Cassandra, while I had destroyed the empire she had built, I hadn't actually addressed the fallout. The lives I'd affected, the trust I had shattered, and more importantly, the things I had sacrificed to get here. It was time to face those consequences head-on. I returned to Dominic. But this time, the air between us was different. There was a sense of finality in the way he looked at me, as if he knew that my role in this game was coming to an end. "You're still here," Dominic said, his voice almost amused. "Thought you might have walked away by now." "I almost did," I replied. "But there's one thing I've learned, Dominic. No matter how far you run, you can't escape yourself, and I need to do this on my own." He raised an eyebrow, but didn't press the issue. "You'll never truly be out of it, not with the kind of power you've tasted. But if you want out, you have to make a choice. You walk away, or you stay in this game. But there's no middle ground." I stared at him for a long time, the weight of his words pressing down on me. It was tempting, knowing how far I had come, how much I had built. But something inside me knew I had to step away from this world for good. The days after I made the choice to walk away from Dominic, Harper, and everything I'd been tangled up in felt strange. There was a kind of eerie calm in the air, as though I had stepped into a new world where nothing made sense. Yet everything seemed oddly familiar. The life I had known, the chaos I had tried to escape, was still waiting for me just beyond the horizon. It was as if I had tried to outrun a storm, only to realize that the clouds were still there, hanging just out of sight. I tried to rebuild, to live a life that wasn't tainted by the lies and manipulation of my past. I found a new place to live, a modest apartment in a quieter part of the city. It wasn't luxurious, but it felt like freedom. I could breathe without feeling like someone was watching my every move. I didn't have to be on guard all the time, anymore. But even in the quiet, there were whispers of the past. I couldn't completely escape the damage I had caused, no matter how hard I tried. The stain of betrayal was hard to wash away, even if the people involved didn't speak my name anymore. The Callet was a late evening when the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I picked up anyway, an instinctual habit from the life I had once led. "Danny," a voice said, low and unfamiliar. My pulse quickened. I didn't recognize the voice, but something about the tone made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. There was a sharpness to it, something that made it clear this wasn't just a casual call. "Who is this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though I felt the weight of the moment press down on me. "Someone you know. Someone who's been watching you for a while." The voice paused, letting the words hang between us like a thick fog. "You think you've walked away, Danny, but you haven't. Not yet. There's still unfinished business." I felt my stomach tighten. "What business?" The voice chuckled, dark and menacing. "That's the thing about the life you've led. You don't get to choose when it's over. It chooses for you." The line went dead before I could say anything else. The return of the ghosts. The next few days felt like a blur. Whoever had called was right. I hadn't really left the past behind. And now it seemed the past was coming for me, demanding closure in ways I hadn't expected. I tried to go about my days normally, but the unease gnawed at me, digging deeper with each passing hour. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that the walls around me were closing in. Then, on the fourth day after the call, things took a more concrete form. I received an envelope in the mail, addressed to me in a handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a single crisp photograph. It was a picture of me, taken from a distance, standing in front of my apartment building. There was no message, no explanation, just the photo. I stared at it for a long time, my mind racing. It was clear now, someone knew where I lived, knew what I was doing, and they weren't done with me. The unraveling. That night, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I had spent too much time running, too much time hiding from the consequences of my actions. It was time to confront whatever this was head on. Contacted Dominic again, against my better judgment. He didn't pick up, but I left him a message, knowing full well that he would hear it. The message was simple. I need information, and I need it fast. Hours passed without any word from him. But I didn't have time to wait. I had a feeling this was bigger than just me, bigger than Cassandra and her empire, bigger than anything I had ever been involved in before. Then, just as I was about to reach out again, the phone rang. It was Dominic. "Danny," he said, his voice grim. "I know what's happening, and I don't think you're ready for it." "Then tell me," I demanded. "I don't care if I'm ready. I need to know." "I can't explain everything right now," he replied, "but there are people in play. People who knew about you before Cassandra, before anyone. They've been waiting for you to slip up, and now you've given them the opening they needed." Felt my heart race. "Who are they?" Dominic's voice dropped to a whisper. "They're the ones who made Cassandra who she was, the ones who trained her, and now they've come for you. You've been marked, Danny. You're the next piece on the chessboard." I felt the ground shift beneath me. The shadows of my past, the things I thought I had escaped, were returning with a vengeance. The choice. I spent the next few days gathering what little I could. Information was scarce, but I knew enough to realize that I had walked into something far darker than anything I had ever imagined. The people Dominic was referring to, these shadowy figures who controlled the strings of power behind the scenes, were far more dangerous than anything Cassandra had ever been. They weren't just in the game for wealth or influence. They were in it for control. Complete control. Of everything. The phone call with Harper didn't give me the clarity I was hoping for, but it did give me something else. A spark of purpose. There was no turning back now. We were on the edge of something big and probably dangerous, and neither of us had any illusions about what it meant. But the truth was, I didn't have a choice anymore. I had already gone too far, hurt too many, and made too many mistakes to just disappear. So I dug in my heels and made a promise to myself. I wouldn't just survive this. I would win. But that meant confronting everything I had avoided for so long, my own past, my own choices, and the hidden figures who had always been pulling the strings. The gathering storm, the next few days, were a blur of preparation. Harper and I pieced together what we could from the scraps of information I had managed to gather, pieces of conversations, old alliances, whispers about secretive groups and underground organizations. But the thing about people like the ones Dominic had warned me about was that they didn't leave evidence. They didn't leave traces. They operated in the shadows, and anyone who got too close vanished. We didn't know who was hunting me or why, but I could feel their presence, like a cold wind pressing against the back of my neck. They were out there, waiting, watching, knowing things about me I didn't even know about myself. And Harper? She had her own motives, her own reasons for helping. I didn't fully trust her. Could I ever? But for the moment, we had a common enemy. And that made her an ally, even if only temporarily. We set up a safe house in the city, a nondescript apartment that could be easily abandoned if things went south. Harper took care of the logistics, reaching out to people in the underworld for information, while I worked on the bigger picture. My plan was simple. Find the people who were behind this, find out who was pulling the strings, and take them down. The first move. I made my first move by reaching out to an old contact, someone I'd worked with back in the days when I was still part of the game, but before things got messy with Cassandra. His name was Elias, quiet, calculating, and with more than his fair share of connections. He owed me a favor, and I knew that if anyone could get me the information I needed, it was him. The meeting was set for midnight. I didn't expect anything too straightforward. Elias was never one for simple answers, and the world we were in wasn't made for simple solutions. When I arrived at the designated location, a dingy bar tucked away in an alley, I immediately noticed the tension in the air. The usual crowd was gone, replaced by men who looked like they'd just stepped out of a war zone. Hard, dangerous, and looking for trouble. Elias was waiting at a corner booth, his eyes hidden behind the brim of a hat. "You're late," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "I'm here, aren't I?" I replied, sitting down across from him. Elias studied me for a moment, his eyes narrowing. "You've gotten yourself into something big this time, haven't you?" "I need information," I said bluntly. "Something's coming for me. Someone's been pulling strings. I need to know who." Elias took a long drag from his cigarette before responding. "The problem with people like you, Danny, is that you always think you're the one in control. You never see the bigger picture. You think, this is all about you, but it's not." I leaned forward, my patience wearing thin. "I'm not here for riddles, Elias. Just tell me what you know." He exhaled, his gaze shifting to the window behind me as if watching for something. "Fine," he said. "You're right about one thing. You've got a target on your back. But it's not just you. They've been watching a lot of people. Too many to count. They've been laying the groundwork for years. All these moves you think you've been making, all the deals you've been struck into, they were just pieces on a chessboard. And now... He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. They're about to checkmate. My blood ran cold. I knew he wasn't just talking about me anymore. Whoever they were bigger than I'd imagined. This wasn't just about personal vendettas. It was about something far more dangerous, something that could change the entire balance of power. The spider's web eye left the meeting with more questions than answers. Elias's cryptic warning was like a shadow hanging over me, and it only deepened the fear that had been gnawing at me since the phone call from the mysterious stranger. The people hunting me weren't just playing for control, they were building an empire, slowly but surely in the shadows. I needed to get ahead of this, but I wasn't sure how. Elias's words stuck with me. They've been laying the groundwork for years. The longer I sat with it, the more I realized how much I had underestimated the forces at play. It wasn't just a few powerful people trying to manipulate the world from the shadows. This was something bigger. I froze. The air felt thick, suffocating, as if the walls of the warehouse had closed in around me. Dominic stood there, his silhouette barely visible in the dim light, but his presence was unmistakable. The last person I ever expected to see. Again, yet the one person whose involvement in this twisted game made the most sense. Harper was the first to speak, though her voice was tight, hesitant. I thought you said he was out of the picture. I couldn't bring myself to answer her right away. My mind was spinning, trying to process what this meant. Dominic, the one man I thought had disappeared from my life for good, only to reappear at the worst possible moment. Danny, Dominic said, his voice calm, almost detached, as if we were merely catching up over coffee rather than standing on the precipice of a disaster. You've gotten yourself into something a bit too deep, haven't you? I took a step forward, my fists clenching at my sides. What is this, Dominic? What are you doing here? He smiled, a cold, humorless thing. I never left, Danny. I've been watching, waiting. I always knew this day would come. His eyes flicked to Harper, who remained still, her face unreadable. And it looks like you found yourself a partner in crime. Harper's posture stiffened, but she didn't flinch. You're the one behind all this, aren't you? All the secrets, all the manipulation. It's been you from the beginning. Dominic's lips curled into a slow grin, almost as if he were enjoying this. Not exactly, Harper, but I've certainly been involved. You could say I'm just one piece of the puzzle. The one who has been keeping an eye on things, making sure the plan unfolds just the way it's meant to. I took another step forward, my mind racing, trying to understand the scope of what he was saying. What plan? What are you talking about? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slowly stepped out of the shadows, his movements deliberate, confident. And then he spoke, each word carrying a weight that seemed to press down on my chest. The plan, Danny, he said, was always about control, always about taking power. You were a part of it, whether you realized it or not. All of you. Every decision you made, every step you took, it was leading you here. To me. I felt a shiver run down my spine as the implications of his words began to settle in. You've been manipulating us, I said, the realization cutting through me like a knife. All this time, you used Cassandra. You used me. You used Harper. Dominic's smile grew wider. Oh, Danny, it's not just about using people. It's about shaping them. You think you're the one who controls your choices, but I've been guiding them all along. Every move you made was part of a much bigger game, and now you're at the center of it. Harper's voice cracked through the tension in the room. And where does it end, Dominic? You've already ruined so many lives. Are you going to do the same to Danny? His eyes shifted to her, the amusement fading into something darker. You really don't understand, do you? This isn't personal. It never was. This is about power, influence. It's about reshaping the world as we know it. And you, Danny? He paused, his gaze locking onto mine. You're the one who could make it happen. You've always had the potential. I shook my head, trying to make sense of what he was saying. I'm not some puppet for you to pull strings, Dominic. I'm not your tool. Ah, but that's where you're wrong, he said, his tone suddenly serious. You've always been my tool. Even when you thought you were out, you were never. Really free. You're just too blind to see it. The room felt smaller now, like a cage closing in. My heart was pounding, and the blood in my veins felt like ice. This was bigger than I had imagined. This wasn't just about Cassandra, it wasn't just about Harper or me. This was about a much larger scheme, one that had been set in motion, long before any of us had even realized. The twisty tried to keep my composure, but it was getting harder. The reality of what Dominic was saying, how intertwined he had been in everything, how he had played everyone, was like a bitter pill I couldn't swallow. You really think you've won, don't you? I said, my voice thick with disbelief. That you can just pull us back into this world of manipulation and lies? Dominic's smile flickered, but there was a darkness behind it now. Oh, Danny, you don't get it, do you? It's already done. It was never about winning or losing. It's about control, and you're too far gone to break free now. You'll either join me, or you'll be crushed under the weight of your own choices. I took a deep breath, feeling a sudden surge of anger. It was a rage I hadn't felt in a long time, a clarity that washed over me. This was my life, my choice. And if I was going to survive this, I needed to stop running, stop hiding behind the lies, and take control of my own fate.